Welcome to Newshour. Tonight we report on a development that may mark a turning point in the Israel-Gaza conflict. Hamas has confirmed it will release Edan Alexander, the last known American hostage held in Gaza. The 21-year-old American-Israeli soldier was abducted during the attacks on southern Israel on the 7th of October 2023 and now has spent over 18 months in captivity. His imminent release, expected within the next 48 hours, follows indirect negotiations mediated by Qatar and Egypt. Hamas describes this as a goodwill gesture towards the United States, coinciding with President Donald Trump's forthcoming visit to the region. Well, the move has renewed speculation over Hamas's intentions and sparked questions about the broader implications for regional security, hostage diplomacy, and the prospects of a wider ceasefire. Well, before we go to our correspondent Trent Murray in Tel Aviv, let's take a brief look now at who Edan Alexander is.
This still image, released by Hamas on April 12th, shows Israeli-American soldier Edan Alexander. The caption reads, "I am the soldier Edan Alexander, and I have been held captive in Gaza for 551 days. His image has become a symbol of endurance for a family waiting and a nation watching. Back in Tenafly, New Jersey, Edan's presence lingers in photographs, in the Torah beside him, and on signs outside the local Jewish community centre. His hometown has stood behind him since the day he went missing. Captured on October 7th, 2023, Edan was serving in the Israel Defense Forces. He is now the last known American held hostage in Gaza.
Edan is a great guy, Jersey boy, all-American kid, great swimmer. Graduated from the high school like everybody else instead of college. Traveled to Israel, served in IDF, and found himself on the wrong spot in the wrong time. And here, 435 days later, we're here fighting for his return.
His face has been printed on leaflets, community boards, and even milk cartons. In February, Hamas released 3 other Israeli hostages to thunderous cheers from masked militants, part of an earlier deal to ease tensions and allow humanitarian access to Gaza. Now, with pressure mounting and diplomacy reactivated, Hamas says it will release the last Israeli-American hostage. Gaza-based official Khalil al-Hayya said the agreement is backed by Qatar, Egypt and Turkey and tied to broader ceasefire efforts. US envoy Adam Baylor called it a positive step, crediting President Trump's visit and coordination by Secretary Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff.
OK, let's go to Tel Aviv now, where Trent Murray has more on the timing and the stakes of this announcement.
Well, Guy, Hamas made this announcement late Sunday, and it, of course, comes on the eve of President Trump visiting this region on a 3-country tour of the Middle East. He'll be travelling to Saudi Arabia, Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. Hamas is saying that the release of this hostage is part of a goodwill gesture to the president as he embarks on this visit here. The hostage in question is 21-year-old Edan Alexander. He is an American-Israeli citizen born here in Tel Aviv but grew up in New Jersey. He was working with the IDF in an elite infantry unit on October 7th. He was posted on the border with Gaza when he was captured by Hamas militants. He has now spent 583 days in their captivity. His family, responding to this news, say it is the greatest gift imaginable to get their loved one home after so long in captivity. President Trump himself has also commented on this news, calling it monumental and saying it is a step taken in good faith. Hamas is saying that this is part of a deal to try and get a ceasefire negotiation. The Israeli government is acknowledging that they are preparing to receive Edan Alexander, but they are also saying that they are not willing now to sign up to a longer-term ceasefire unless more hostages are released. It is thought that there are still 59 hostages being held within Gaza, up to 24 of them still alive. The Israelis are saying they'd like to see at least 10 released en masse before they'll even consider a longer-term ceasefire. It, of course, comes, though, as humanitarian groups continue to sound the alarm over this months-long blockade now that the Israeli government is imposing on Gaza. We've seen no food or medicine or other aid enter the Strip now since early March. We expect that, alongside tensions in Iran and the situation with the Houthis in Yemen, will loom large over President Trump's historic visit to the Middle East this week. In Tel Aviv, Trent Murray for A News.
Okay, joining me now live from Amsterdam in the Netherlands is the former IDF member Ken van Lelant. Ken, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Newshour. We heard, didn't we, there in Trent's piece that this is, Hamas have said this is a goodwill gesture towards America. What about Israel, though? How is this development going to be seen? Will it change Israel's military strategy? And how will public opinion in Israel be affected by it?
Well, there's a few questions in a row. Let's say from a strategic point of view, it will not change the Israeli incursion, the planned incursion, the 70,000 new soldiers, recruits that are aiming to destroy Hamas. You know, this is one of these sinister tricks that Hamas has on its sleeve to put pressure on the process. Especially, they've selected an American Israeli in order to influence the Americans. It's a very sinister process, actually, and it influences the public opinion as well. So what we're looking at over here is a paradox. We are managing a paradox because, you know, all these hostages, maybe there are a few alive, they play the cards till the last moment, and they play with them as bargain chips in a very sinister way. And now they're playing the American-Israeli hostage, and they expect the Israelis to comply and to set up a ceasefire deal. But I can assure you that Netanyahu is facing a dilemma. So the public opinion is against him. International public opinion is against him. But at the same time, he has to resolve this problem that as long as Hamas is in power in Gaza, the war is not over. It will never be over. Because you can't deal with terrorists. No way. Especially not these terrorists, because they're barbarians. And they will take every opportunity to create a hudna as a temporary ceasefire to rearm and to regain strength and start all over again. That would be a major mistake. So the paradox at the other side is that the Israeli public is sick and tired of this war, although they realize that there is no other option and objective to destroy Hamas. And that's a very painful decision, I can tell you. So this will not lead to a major change in the IDF or in the Israeli government. They will go after Hamas, and especially that the new strategy is a different strategy than the former strategy, simply by the fact it's not body count anymore and in short incursions, but it is holding your territory and building a perimeter where they will squeeze Hamas into submission. That's what's going to happen.
So
that's a very painful process.
Sorry to cut across you there, but just exploring this a bit further. So if more hostages are released, are you saying that still won't be enough for a long-term ceasefire? How do you ascertain what will be required in order for that long-term ceasefire to hold?
Nothing will hold. You know, there may be 21 hostages left in a very tearful situation. These people are very maltreated, and it is terrible that they are still being held as hostages. The only thing what Hamas could do is release all these hostages, and even that, and they know that the Israelis will push through and will defeat Hamas, because there is no other option in here. There's no other option.
And Mr. Trump's role in all of this, I mean, obviously there are very warm words exchanged between the two leaders, between Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Trump, but how does the Israeli public view Mr. Trump's role as a catalyst, as a supportive at the moment? Because Mr. Trump's position has shifted a little bit. What is the current view of Mr. Trump's role in this process?
Well, in fact, that's rather simple, actually. He would like to, the Abraham Accords are very important to him. So he's going to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the Emirates in order to refuel this process. And that's a very wise thing to do. So it's a political balance court where he's dancing on, because if he has the most important Arab states with him, then he can extend his Abraham Accords presumably with Lebanon and maybe even Syria, together with Egypt and Jordan. And the situation is rather particular right now because, as we all know, that the situation in Egypt is very dear, but also in Jordan is very dear. The majority of the population in Jordan, for example, 75% are West Bank Palestinians, and 90% of them support Hamas. So you can imagine that King Abdullah is frightened about the situation in his country. So in order to build the Abraham Accords as a major force of strength, he has to dance on the balance court. So he can't go all the way with the Israelis, while at the same time he will support the Israelis with their military incursion, step by step, in defeating Hamas. Because as soon as all these hostages are killed, or just have suffered and they died, then what do you think will happen? That we're going to deal with Hamas and talk to them and say, well, is there anything going to change? No, of course not. They will regain power and they will fight again. So what do you do?
I mean, clearly the picture you paint is one of absolutely no trust, no potential for any dialogue between the two. With the situation as it is, with the humanitarian crisis that we've seen, how is Israel balancing those humanitarian concerns with their clear strategic goals?
Well, as I told you, it's a paradox. Since we have here the international public opinion that's pressing on the Israelis, especially Europe, they all live in la-la land over here, that they think you can fight a war without putting pressure on, let's say, on the humanitarian side. When the Americans were fighting in the Second World War in Germany, they did everything in order to destroy the Nazis, right? So the Israelis are in a very dear situation that they have to take, let's say, the public opinion into account and fight so many enemies at the same time. And that makes it very, very difficult. And I think that Netanyahu has no other option to go through with his own strategy, is to destroy Hamas. There's no other option.
And do you think that strategy is well understood by the other actors in this process, Mr. Trump, for example?
Of course he does. Netanyahu and Trump, they call almost every day each other. Israel is the 52nd state of the United States. So they coordinate all their actions in a very proper way.
Very interesting indeed. Look, thank you so much for joining us from Amsterdam. Much appreciated. Thanks for joining us here on NewsHour. Let's go to Ramallah now in the West Bank and join the journalist, Mr. Mohammed Najib. Mr. Najib, thank you very much indeed for joining us on NewsHour. Some very strong words there we heard on the Israeli side. Hamas, though, has framed this as a goodwill gesture. Do you see this as a credible step towards a serious negotiation, or do you think it's more symbolic?
Good question, sir. Actually, Hamas had received a recommendation by the Qataris and the Egyptians to give a goodwill gesture to the U.S. President Donald Trump, and they agreed to free the Israeli-American citizenship soldier, Alexander. And it also achieved a political achievement as Hamas launched a direct dialogue with the United States, and the Hamas believes that the American President Donald Trump is the only one who can stop the war. Hamas said it's ready to free all the hostages, but they want in return to stop the war and the IDF withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. The Israeli Prime Minister said he wants to free the soldiers, the hostages, all of them, and to continue the war. So in the recent development and situations, it's become belief for Hamas, or persuasion for Hamas, that the United States now have the capability to impose a political solution on the Israeli government, on the Israeli Prime Minister, to stop the war and reach a permanent compromise in the Gaza Strip. Actually, the Palestinians think that the Netanyahu motives to continue this war is not because for security reason, as it was criticized by former Defense Minister Benny Gantz and former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, who said the Israelis should stop the war in Gaza and withdraw from the Gaza Strip. But it's for political reason, because he concerned about his coalition collapse. He concerned more about Smotrich and Ben Gvir more than other issue. Otherwise, no one in this world understands why the starvation of 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza who are not Hamas, as well as in the West Bank, not all the Palestinians in the West Bank supports Hamas. They sympathize with the civilians in Gaza who are bombed and suffer the starvation.
It's a very deliberate, very overt overture from Hamas to President Trump. I'd be interested to know, within the Palestinian leadership, how do they view Mr. Trump?
They hope that the Trump administration will allow the Palestinian Authority to return to rule Gaza after the end of the war, as Hamas will disappear from the scene. And Hamas also recognize that it failed and it will not rule Gaza Strip, because they know that no one in this world will pay single dollars to reconstruct the Gaza Strip as long as Hamas there. So the Palestinian Authority believes that Hamas should stop ruling Gaza Strip and turn to the Palestinian Authority or other administration by Arabs and international to rule Gaza and to take care of the 2.3 million Palestinians there and to start the reconstructions. And this is what they hope, that the Saudis meetings with Trump will push on to accept that issue. And the Palestinian Deputy President Hussein al-Sheikh met with Mohammed bin Salman in the past few days, and also the Qatari Prime Minister, to ask them, to urge them to raise the Palestinian issue during their meetings with visiting President Trump tomorrow and after tomorrow.
And you mentioned some very powerful, influential stakeholders there. Obviously, they're listening to Hamas, but also exerting some pressure too. Tell us about some of that pressure that Hamas has been experiencing.
Hamas wants to stop the war because it's responsible for the sufferance of the 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza. They have no food, don't have anything to offer them, and also they blamed for the 7th October. So they want to stop the war, but the Prime Minister Netanyahu want to continue. So it's a challenge between Netanyahu personally and Hamas, but who pays the price are the hostages, Israeli hostages in Gaza, and the 2.3 million Palestinians. And the Qataris and the Egyptian also pressures Hamas to accept to any offer, and Witkoff also was provided an offer. Hamas said they are ready to stop the violence for a long-term ceasefire, 5 to 7 years, but the Israelis also refuse that, and they insist of disarmament of the movement now and to humiliate them by the ultimate victory he talked about. But also Hamas wants international guarantees to reach any agreement. And the Qataris and the Egyptians are pushing for that, and they hope also during the Trump visit they can receive more options and more pressure on Israel to accept end of the war.
And finally, just ask you about Hamas's standing internally. Regarding this specific event, the release of the final American hostage, do you think that it will strengthen Hamas's standing with Palestinians or possibly weaken it?
I don't think they will. Hamas have to turn all the hostages to Israel and to stop the war, because who suffers? The Gaza Strip destroyed, there is threat of immigration, of displacement of Palestinians, and to leave the Gaza Strip. This is not the goal of any national movement. The Palestinians struggle to bring the Palestinians back to the homeland, not to immigrate them, and that was because of the 18 months war. So Hamas is not on the right side. They have to do, but also Hamas itself cannot do the thing itself as long as the Israeli Prime Minister doesn't want to to end the war. They want to end the war and that all the IDF troops leave the Gaza Strip and then they start the reconstructions or get any guarantees of their lives. But right now still under discussions, and hope that Trump visits and his advisors being in the region and continuous contacts and pressure by Egypt and Qatar could improve the situation, and Trump can pressure the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to stop the war.
Okay, very interesting. Mr. Najib, thank you very much indeed for joining us there from Ramallah in the West Bank. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, that is all for this edition of Newshour. The release then of Edan Alexander may offer a glimmer of hope, but the broader picture remains fraught with complexity. With diplomatic channels cautiously reopening, much still depends on what follows. Well, from all of us here at A News, thank you for watching.